Good morning, everybody. It's Mr. Bester. I want to welcome you back to this Tuesday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. So hope everybody gets to enjoy that and have a little fun in your own way as you celebrate. I'm coming to you after the weekend with a couple of updates. Number one, I want to point out the fact that we do have a review for you from last week in your work in the excretory system. So first things first, make sure you check the notes below, the description below, and in there you're going to find information about the review or Kahoot that you guys can try. There's two different codes. Try it the first time, see how you do, and based on your success or lack thereof, try it a second time, see if you can make some improvements, and see how your score ends up in that situation. Second thing I want you to do is you're taking a look at this video clip. I've got some information on the respiratory system. Following that, you're going to have some reading that I think can provide an additional resource for you and information about how to learn a little bit more, or maybe look back or reflect back on how to understand the respiratory system in greater detail. And then lastly, I have some questions for you to answer in relation to our conversation now and some of the reading. So a number of things going on today. One, a review and reflection back on last week, see how you score on that Kahoot. Two, checking out this video and some of the new information I have for you on the respiratory system. Thirdly, make sure you take a chance to read through the information on the respiratory system. And then last, answer some more questions. Just practice, and I've got the answers on the bottom. Try to answer the questions on your own the first time, and then look and see what the answers, the correct answers, would have been. So let's get started with the respiratory system, in particular, the job of our respiratory system. As we inhale, and you guys can do that with me, of course, as you're at home, and we exhale, we have a critical job, and that is the number one job of the respiratory system: to provide oxygen through our inhalation to all the cells of the body. From our fingertips to the ends of our toes, can we get oxygen to those cells? And then, of course, can we get carbon dioxide, the waste product, removed from those cells? It's critical that that's done as well. So consider the idea as to why we want to get any of these cells oxygen. What's going on at the cellular level that needs the oxygen? And that's referred to as cellular respiration. And what cellular respiration really is it's a series of reactions within the cells that those cells are using oxygen to help release what we call energy from sugar molecules that allow for the powering of all cellular functions. So oxygen has to get used in each cell to help break down the sugar molecules that contain energy that our cells can use and provide cellular function for us. So it's a critical piece that allows all of our life to exist. Every interaction that we have and everything that goes on in our bodies must take place. So oxygen has to get there. But then the waste product, of course, is carbon dioxide, and that has to leave. So we've got to get oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. And there's critical parts of this respiratory system, of which some of you are quite familiar. Some of you can see on the video screen as take a look at my nose and my mouth. Both of those are critical factors as we get going as well. And then from there, air enters that pathway through the nose and the mouth, and it can enter an area known as the pharynx. And the pharynx is the first of a series of two parts before it reaches the trachea, where air is held. And at the bottom portion of the pharynx, we've got an epiglottis, which fortunately helps keep food and liquids from going down the respiratory system or the trachea. That's pretty critical. And some of you have had that where we say, oh, you take a drink of water and we say it went down the wrong pipe. Well, our epiglottis struggled in its performance at that time, but you end up coughing that back out of your trachea. It's a response. It's an involuntary response, which isn't fun, but it's critical to help allow you to go back to breathing normally. So then you have the larynx, and the larynx allows me to talk to you right now because it holds a couple of muscular flaps which make up our vocal cords, and you're hearing the production of those vocal cords right now as I talk with you. So nose, mouth, pharynx, then onto the larynx, where air can travel past the vocal cords to produce sound, and then it's into the trachea. And you can see my trachea right here on the video clip, and the trachea is held open by these C-shaped cartilaginous rings which really prevent it from failing its structural integrity. Where the esophagus, where food travels, is a real thin muscular tube. This is a hollow and open tube. I'll move mine for you just a little bit. It's kind of gross looking, but you can see in there, it's a tube that holds its structure, and that's really critical. So understand that air that's traveling, air of course holding in the oxygen, is traveling down now through our trachea, gets even further down into our trachea. It wants to get to the lungs, as you know, but before it gets to the lungs, it must pass through our bronchi, which are the first set of breaking off tubes, then into our bronchioles, so each tube gets smaller and smaller within each lung, or to each lung, and then it's the critical area known as the alveoli. And it's at these alveoli where gas exchange occurs. What do I mean? We have a connection now with the circulatory system, where blood, which is the carrier throughout our bodies of oxygen and carbon dioxide, have the chance to exchange air with the air that we've brought in. And that's critical. So how does it do so? Diffusion across the cell membrane. You remember this. Areas will move, or materials will travel from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. And that all happens at the alveoli. It's these small sac-like structures that exist within the lungs, which allow for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So their oxygen that's brought into our body is now transported into the blood, which will eventually reach our cells. And from there, carbon dioxide is released back into the alveoli, which then allows for the exhalation of this waste product in our bodies. So kind of a cool process, can be a little bit confusing as well. But remember, every breath you take, inhale, and every exhalation, this is occurring. And the ultimate factor in allowing this to occur is a very large muscle that sits at the base of our respiratory system, known as the diaphragm. We can't see it in our bodies, but it's there. And this diaphragm, what it does when it contracts is it actually pulls down, which creates a very unique vacuum scenario, which then allows air to rush in to our mouths. So when you utilize your diaphragm well, that's that muscular organ, it actually pulls down and allows for air to rush in. It creates a space where air can rush in, which then allows for air to enter, ultimately our lungs. And as we mentioned, oxygen getting back to every one of your cells. So that's enough on my version of the respiratory system, but I want you guys to take a look, of course, at what you find in the reading that I've got next, and then try to answer some questions as well. So for this particular Tuesday, I want to wish you a great one. We take for granted the breathing that exists, but it offers us so much, in particular, oxygen to all of our cells, including those at the tip of our toes. So for Mr. Bester, this is me wishing you a fantastic day. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.